Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Kenneth Graham's Wind in the Willows. We are now on Chapter 4, titled Badger's Home. Remember, you're going to be using a capital on each one and a period on each one because that makes them complete sentences. We have to use complete sentences that start with a capital and end with a period. I know you're getting tired of hearing that, but we're not all doing it yet. Make sure we answer with complete sentences. All right, let's get started with Chapter 4, Badger's Home. They waited patiently for what seemed a very long time. At last the door opened, a few inches.
"Who is it this time?"
asked a gruff voice.
"Oh, Badger," cried the rat. "It's me, Rat, and my friend Mole.
We've lost our way in the snow."
"Lost in the snow?"
exclaimed the Badger, a quite different voice.
"And a wild wood, too? But come in with you."
The two animals tumbled over each other to get inside. The Badger, who wore a long bathrobe, carried a flat candlestick in his paw. He looked kindly down at them and patted both their heads and said,
"Oh, this is not the sort of night for small animals to be out."
He shuffled on in front of them, carrying the light. At once they found themselves in all the glow and warmth of a large fire-lit kitchen. It was a cheerful room, just right for friendly chats. The kindly Badger removed their wet coats and boots and thrust them down on a bench to toast themselves by the fire. Then he fetched them bathrobes and slippers, and he himself cleaned and bandaged the mole's shin, till the whole thing was just as good as new, if not better. When at last they were nicely warmed, the Badger summoned them to the table, where he had been preparing a meal. For a long time there was no conversation, for the two animals were so hungry. When they finally did start talking, it was an awful sort of talking, with one's mouth full. The Badger did not mind that sort of thing at all, nor did he notice elbows on the table, or everybody speaking at once, as he did not go into society himself. Badger didn't believe that these things mattered. We know, of course, that he is wrong, because they do matter very much, but it would take a long time here to explain why. When supper was finished, they gathered around the fire, and the Badger said heartily, "Tell us, how's old Toad going on?"
From bad to worse," said the rat gravely.
"Another smash up last week. He thinks he's a heaven-born driver."
"How many does that make?"
inquired the Badger gloomily.
"This'll be the 7th," answered the rat.
"He's been in the hospital 3 times, put in the Mole, and as for the fines he had to pay, it's simply awful."
"He's going to end up either dead or bankrupt," said the rat. "We're his friends. Oughtn't we do something?"
The Badger thought for a moment, and then said, "Once spring is here, we'll take Toad seriously in hand. We'll bring him back to reason. We'll make him a sensible Toad. You're asleep, Rat."
"Not me," said the rat, waking up with a jerk.
"It's time we were all in bed," said the Badger. "Come along, and I'll show you your beds. Breakfast at any hour you please." The next morning, the two tired animals came downstairs to breakfast very late and found 2 young hedgehogs sitting at the table eating oatmeal.
"Where have you youngsters come from?"
asked the rat pleasantly. "Lost your way in the snow, I suppose?"
"Yes, sir," said the older hedgehog. "We were trying to find our way to school. Mother would have us go regardless of the weather, and we lost ourselves, and at last we happened up against Mr. Badger's back door."
"I understand," said the rat, cutting himself with some bacon, while the Mole fried eggs.
"What's the weather like?"
"Terribly deep, the snow is, sir," said the hedgehog.
"And Mr. Badger's gone into his study. He said he had a lot of work to do this particular morning, so he was not to be disturbed."
The rat winked at the Mole. The animals knew that Badger hadn't eaten a hearty breakfast, had retired to his study for a winter's nap. The front door bell clanged loudly, and the rat sent a smaller hedgehog to see who it might be. The hedgehog returned with the otter.
Thought I would find you here, said the otter cheerfully. Not one at home at your place. Everyone said something bad had happened. I didn't believe it. Thought Molly had probably let his curiosity get the best of him. He's talked about Badger all summer. Just to be sure, though, I came straight here.
Badger's the chap, eh?
He laughed. Here, Mole, fry me some ham. Must speak to Ratty here. Haven't seen him since yesterday.
The mole had the hedgehogs fry some ham, and he returned to his own breakfast. The otter and the rat eagerly talked riverbank gossip. A plate of fried ham had been cleared and sent back for more when the badger entered and greeted them all.
It must be getting lunchtime, he remarked to the otter. You must be hungry this cold morning. Rather, replied the otter, winking at the mole. The sight of these greedy young hedgehogs eating all that ham makes me feel positively starved.
The hedgehogs, who were beginning to feel hungry again after working so hard at their frying, looked timidly up at Mr. Badger, but were too shy to correct the otter's fib.
You two youngsters be off home to your mother, said the badger kindly. You won't want any lunch today. I'll say, goodness, what you must have eaten already.
After the hedgehogs had left, they all sat down to lunch together. The mole found himself placed next to Mr. Badger. He told him how comfortable and homelike Badger's place felt to him. The badger grinned. I agree. There's no security or peace or quiet except underground, and above all, no weather. Look at Rat, now. Couple of feet of flood water and he's got to move out and rent the place. Uncomfortable, a bother, and horribly expensive. Take Toad. I say nothing against Toad Hall. Quite the best house in these parts. As a house. But supposing a fire breaks out, where's Toad? Supposing roof tiles are blown off, or walls sink or crack, or windows get broken, where's Toad? Supposing the rooms are drafty, I hate a draft myself, where's Toad? Underground. That's my idea of a home. The mole nodded enthusiastically, and the badger felt friendly toward him. Then lunch is over, he said. I'll take you round this little place of mine. I can see you'll appreciate it. After lunch, the badger did just that. The mole was amazed at all the passageways and huge rooms with pillars and archways. It used to be part of a city made by people long ago, exclaimed the badger. They thought it would last forever, but now it is part of the wildwood. The people are gone, and the animals are here, both good and bad. It takes all sorts to make a world. I've met some, said the mole with a shiver. Well, well, said the badger. We must live and let live. I'll pass the word that you are my friend. You'll have no more trouble in the wildwood. After Mole had finished with the tour and returned to the kitchen, the rat said, Come along, Mole. We don't want to spend another night in the wildwood. You really needn't fret, Ratty, stated the badger calmly. When you really have to go, you shall leave by one of my shortcuts. The rat, still anxious to be off and attended to his river, so the badger led the way along the damp tunnel that seemed to go on for miles. At last, daylight began to show itself through the vine-covered hole. The badger wished them well and waved goodbye. As the three emerged from the tunnel on the edge of the wildwood, the otter took charge, and they followed behind him in a beeline. Pausing for a moment, though, they looked back at the wildwood, dark, thick, and scary. Then they happily turned and made swiftly for home. They traveled quietly, each thinking his own private thoughts. The mole saw his life clearly. He was an animal of field and hedgerow. He knew he belonged with pleasant pastures and quiet country lanes and well-tendered garden plots. Others could have the harshness of the wild wood, the hard life, roughing it with nature. He had dared to venture forth, and he had found his place. He hurried on, content and at peace. All right, so what'd you think of today's chapter? What'd you think of Badger's home? Pretty cool, right? All right, so now you get to answer your questions with Oh, come on. You can answer that. You have to answer these questions with complete sentences. Complete sentences start with a, not a period. Complete sentences start with a, that's right, a capital, and end with a period. All right, have a great rest of your day. Make sure you use those complete sentences, and we'll see you tomorrow.